And you always have an option of opening channels directly from your mobile wallet with other nodes. If they are supporting this feature, which we will probably do as a feature flag inside LNP node for not closing the channel when the peer is offline, because it's required for a mobile world, but the most of the time the application will be offline. So that's the setup that we propose, and we are experimenting with it with our own development efforts and with Bitfinex. And we are very open to any comments and improvements to this schema. So before it's implemented, we can make it even better. So if you have any comments right now, you can tell us about, or you can write it in GitHub later.
Maxim, when the Bifrost is ready, will it fit somewhere in this schema, or it will not be anywhere on this level?
Well, yes, here I'm showing the channels, so you wouldn't have a channel with Bifrost server. But the bottom line idea that wallet company developers of the mobile wallets, they will probably run their own Bifrost server, because it will provide a monetization model for wallets, basically. You will store the payment data for RGB payments for your customers, and probably you will charge that some small micro payments via Lightning Network for that storage. So that's pretty strong monetization model. And of course, users may be provided with an option to select other Bifrost servers, because they will be part of the Lightning Network. So basically, the Bifrost functionality will be delivered by the same LNP nodes. So each LNP node will be a Bifrost server if it's compiled with a proper option. And it will be able to store the RGB payments for other parties. And it will provide another monetization model for your own personal LNP node if you have the LNP node on your own server.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So theoretically, it wouldn't work out of the box because of many limitations, but theoretically, because each LNP node can be a Bifrost node, your mobile phone can be also a Bifrost node. And if you have a mesh mobile network, which you don't have today, but in the future, if you have a mesh mobile network, you will be able to utilize that to store the payments on behalf of others and even earn some money with your mobile phone. But again, it's not something that will work quite soon because of mesh network technical limitations, because we don't have them working in practice. Any other comments?
Not really.
Okay. The final slide is the workflow that was shared today in the RGB.
Maybe, sorry, Maxim, just a thing about the slide before, out of a pure symmetry consideration. In theory, you could imagine even a more symmetric depiction in which you have this kind of hub node intermediating when you're offline Lightning Network payments and RGB on-chain payments, and the intersection, which is basically RGB payments on Lightning Network. So it could be, I mean, what I mean is that you could have RGB on-chain payment intermediated by a node which is not LN itself, or the fact that the node is moving around consignments implies that you also have Bitcoin Lightning node capabilities. So sorry, I reformulated my question because it's absolutely not understandable. Do you imagine also a few nodes that could just rely RGB consignment data without also being Bitcoin Lightning Network nodes?
Yes, and it works with this setup out of the box. So basically, RGB node is not aware of Lightning Network at all. It has no concept of Lightning Network and idea. So when you have RGB node, the only thing that it can do is to accept a consignment and validate it against Bitcoin transaction graph. And it even don't know where the transaction graph is coming from on-chain part or from Lightning node channel. So in terms of RGB node, it works the same way for on-chain and off-chain payments. No difference at all. So when you, for instance, have a mobile application with RGB node only, and you have RGB node on your home server, or you have a Bifrost server by a wallet company, you will be able to accept on-chain payments with this setup. So you will just basically indicate several beneficiaries, like in the order. First, you will put your mobile node. If it's offline, the payment will go to your home RGB node. If it's online, the payment will go to a Bifrost server. And this will be done with the same universal invoice format as we were discussing before. When you add a Lightning node to this equation, the only thing that changes is that now you are able to accept both Bitcoin Lightning payments and RGB Lightning payments. And it changed nothing with the RGB part. It works the same way. It changed the only thing that it adds Lightning off-chain payments to the equation.
Thanks.
Do we have this user, KickPit, whose nick is KickPit, from the Telegram group, who shared this workflow today?
Yes, I do. I'm just here.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much for this schema. It's pretty much comprehensive, and I don't see anything that is incorrect here. I have only one small thing. So basically, it explains some terms, the core terms, at the top of the schema, and I need to explain that witness transaction PSBT, it's not any PSBT. It's just a very specific transaction which actually spans an output containing RGB asset. So each time when you need to transfer RGB asset, you need to spend Bitcoin transaction output with an assigned asset. And when you spend it, the transaction spending this output is called a witness transaction, just to differentiate it from any other transactions. And the witness transaction is because it's a part of single use seal witness structure by Peter Todd, so it's his term. And basically PSBT containing a witness transaction is witness PSBT because it contains a witness transaction. So that's terminological meaning of this. Then asset issuance. Yes, that is correct. You issue token you assign the token to a specific issuer UDXOs, and you get an asset ID in return. However, when you need to share this asset, how you can do it? So for others to accept the payment in this asset, they need to know the asset ID and the asset data. So you can export an issued asset in the form of backstring. It's basically an asset genesis, serialized as a backstring. It starts with RGB 1 and then back data, and you just copy them and send to other wallets, or make them available on your website or as a QR code. Or later, when the Bifrost infrastructure will be there, you will just send it to any Bifrost server and it will propagate through the Bifrost network. So wallets connecting Bifrost server will download this data to know about this asset that you issued. So this is how the information about issued assets is spread. And if you're interested, you may look into one of presentations that we had. It was a presentation of Bitcoin Pro, a software that we developed for issuing the assets. And it shows how the actual asset can be configured, issued, and represented. And so with this part of the asset issuance, you get asset ID as a return, but you're also able to export the asset genesis, either in binary form or as a backstring. For the asset transfer, for the asset transfer. Everything is correct. The only addition is that the outpoint blending factor, it's not set here, so it would be nice to add. Output blending factor must be known only by the person who creates invoice, by the person who receives funds. So this person creates the blending factor at the first stage, keeps it safe for himself, and uses at the last stage.
Yeah, actually, I've put it in the glossary on the output blending factor, that it must be kept secret.
All right.
But, maybe I can specify it a bit more.
And the second amendment is that you have a transfer receiver part, you have an accept comment. In fact, there are two comments, the verify and accept. So first comment, verify, like if you're using wallet, of course, you wouldn't see it. It will happen behind the scenes as a single step. But the idea is that with the first step, verify, you verify the consignment against Bitcoin transaction graph. So with verify, you must go to Electrum server, or in the future to the BP node, or to the Lightning or LNP server to make sure that the transaction, the consignment is properly structured.
So there is no double spending when you check the consignment, or it's not here?
Yeah, it checks everything. It checks against Bitcoin transaction graph, against double spending, against inflation, against the schema. All the RGB checking is done with the verify schema. And the verify command returns the software who calls the verify command a list of issues. So if there is any issues with this consignment, they are all listed, and there is severity flag like a error, verification error, warning, and information. So if you, for instance, have a transaction which ID which is not found, or which is, for instance, you had a rework in the Bitcoin blockchain, so the transaction is not there anymore, it returns not a error but a warning. So the wallet software can take a informed decision. So if user would like to enforce, he still will be able to receive this payment, even if the transaction is not mined yet, for instance. While all other issues like double spendings or inflation and everything like that, of course, are reported as error. And the verification just not returns the first error, it means. It runs the full verification from the beginning till the end always, and it reports all the issues that it maps. So basically you got the big structure explaining what's wrong with the consignment or saying that everything is correct. Plus reporting some statistics. And then you have this accept step. So you, after you are being informed about the structure and the risks, you may accept. And accept doesn't validate, it just accepts whatever it's set to accept.
Okay, perfect. I'll add it in the graph, I think.
Yes, and thank you for the schema. I think it will be very useful for those who start working with RGB, because it's really hard to understand how it works for external users.
It took me some time to make it a proper understanding of this, but that's great.
Thanks.
We can also add, especially after the amendments are done, we can maybe spice it up design-wise and even add it to our websites as one of the explanations of RGB.
Yeah, I think it would be quite good.
Sure, if no one
you're not against it.
But I'll try to send you a new version that is clearer and maybe a bit more beautiful or something, and then you tell me if you want to take it or not.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Really awesome.
Actually, this is a good moment to say one thing about the documentation. Just give me 1 second. I will find the slide related to this. Here. So if you look into this table, just a second. If you look into this table, here we have a docs row in the middle of it. And basically, what docs we will be working on in terms of RGB and LNP nodes is a different forms of docs. First of all, we will have docs for integrators, those who integrate the RGB LNP node mobile wallet or exchange, and these docs will be covering how to use the actual product in terms of integration, and it will be part of RGB SDK. Additionally to that, we already have a documentation covering how internals of RGB is working, and this will be more important for those who would like to develop new RGB schema or contribute into the core RGB development or LNP node development, or for instance, to those node developers like who would like to add LNP, who'd like to add RGB to their node. So if, for instance, Lightning Labs or Blockstream one day will decide to add it to their nodes, they will need not the integrator's documentation, but documentation about internals of the RGB library. So that's why the difference between RGB core and RGB node. So RGB node is a node, but for instance, Lightning node developers, they would like to use not RGB node, but RGB core library to do a more deep integration. The third type of documentation is actually end user guidelines. So when we have an RGB node and LNP node and some end user consumer who is not a developer would like to install it on his own server, he needs a guideline how he can compile it, install it, and run it, and its API and everything, how he can manipulate it from a command line interface and so on and so forth. So we will have three categories of documentation. And the fourth category is basically the explanation of the standards of how RGB works as a standard and this workflow. So it's important to understand which type of documentation we are talking in each case. And the priority for developing these docs is, first of all, of course, we will be focusing on the wallet developers and integrators to enable, because if there is no software able to work with RGB, there will be no adoption. That's all on my side for today.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think we can wrap this up then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.